Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to this very exciting segment today. And hey, thank God it's Friday. Well, looking onto the weekend, and it's going to be a glorious weekend by the looks of it. And unfortunately, we could not have a show yesterday. We were in Mount Tamborine, and it was a wedding of its kind. So congratulations to Ron and Ninu for that wonderful wedding in Mount Tamborine. Everything about the wedding, like the venue, the whole thing, the way it was done, and it was just amazing. So proud and privileged to be there. We'll bring some footage to you sometime later in this show. Not today, but another day. Right now, that situation in Sydney and with the floods is still not getting under control. So here's some drone footage. So as you can see, quite widespread, and of course there is still no signs of relief. And SES and the police are all very, very busy trying to get the situation under control. Well, when we talk about getting the situation under control, what can we control? We can't control rain. Of course, floods will come. What we can control is, number one, the warning facilities that, people are warned way in advance, and then the evacuation is timely. Number three, that the assistance that's coming their way be timely as well. So those are the things which we can manage. We can't control rain. We can't control nature. So those are the things, as I mentioned before, that SES and New South Wales Police are working very hard to try and get the situation under control. And there are still, vision coming of people driving into the rain, and it has been said many times, driving into the flooded waters. And the warning has always been very, very clear that, if it is flooded, forget it, that, should not risk driving in flooded waters. It might seem like, there's only a little bit of water on the road. You can underestimate the force of the current. And all it needs is a little bit on the side, and you will be gone. So, it is very, very important that you obey those ones. You might be late, or you might not get to where you really want to, but as you can see, all these kind of evacuations and which are happening, and, hats off to the SES and all the who are workers there who are trying very, very hard to rescue people, get them across, and do the right thing by risking their own lives as well. So it's never easy, but they are doing the best that they can. As you can see from these sorts. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now, of course, moving on. The other thing that people are grappling with and tackling is the petrol prices. Let's take a look at that.
Broome, in the north of Western Australia, is paradise. But not at the petrol pump.
You just got to cop it, really, haven't you?
The fuel is so expensive at the moment that travelling here for just 2 weeks, it would be easier to go 2 weeks to, Bali or South Asia.
This couple is taking on work to pay for the extra cost.
That's why we've actually stopped at Broome for a while, because we've got to recoup and try and gather some funds.
Across the nation, the problem is up in lights. Petrol prices have almost doubled in 2 years. There was a spike after Russia invaded Ukraine, restricting oil supplies. But global prices have fallen almost 15% in a month. Much of that is due to COVID lockdowns in China. There's less demand, so the supply issues are no longer forcing the price up.
If that trend is maintained over the next couple of weeks and months, then we should actually expect to see the price fall at the pump by a comparative margin.
Even though global oil prices have nosedived, it doesn't mean quick relief for petrol prices.
I think, by the end of the year, it's potentially possible that we move further down.
Prices here lag behind the rises and falls on the global market, and our fuel supply is largely imported from Singapore.
So the fact that we've seen these fall in prices in Singapore means that consumers here can now benefit from this fall in oil as well.
But there won't be any extension of the 22 cents a litre cut to fuel excise announced by the former government in the lead-up to its election loss.
It ends in September. Even that 6-month relief costs about $3 billion.
The stuttering world economy may have slowed down demand, taking the heat out of oil prices and other commodities like iron ore.
You know, we've seen emerging and developing markets have the slowdown already. You can look at Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Laos, but now the question is what's happening with advanced economies, and I think the slowdown is now being expected.
Some traders see a 25% fall in oil prices on recession fears.
But we still have a proportion that are suggesting that the market will remain tight and that we will see a 10% rise. So it's anyone's bet at the moment.
Fuel costs have been adding to the rising cost of living and doing business, driving inflation and the case for higher interest rates. But even with pump prices at record highs, petrol in Australia is cheap and lightly taxed. Meanwhile, the world is rushing to electrify its vehicle fleet. Norway is one of the biggest oil producers in the world, but it's banning the sale of petrol cars in the next 3 years. Over there, 3/4 of new cars sold are electric vehicles. Here, it's less than 1%, meaning Australians will be filling up at the pump for a while yet.
We're not using air conditioning and we're really just poking along, really driving totally to fuel saving.
With a long road ahead.
And a long road ahead, of course, and people are feeling that heat now of the petrol price rises. We now just before the election that with the temporary relief, the prices were a little bit under control, gone out of control once again. Everything's going up. Now it's the interest rate has gone up, the basic minimum wages have gone up, the cost of living has gone up, so everything's just going up. Where are we headed to? Well, right now, one of the things is that Australians over 30 would be eligible for the 4th COVID vaccine. So much for that one vaccine that we were going to have, the 4th COVID vaccine. Here's the report.
Another wave of COVID has arrived.
The situation has changed because the virus has evolved.
With new Omicron variants wreaking havoc, the government is once again turning to vaccines as a first line of defence.
Being up to date with your vaccines is crucial.
ATAGI, the group which advises the government on vaccines, has recommended 7 million more Australians be made eligible for a 4th shot. Advice quickly accepted.
The decision takes effect from the coming Monday, the 11th of July.
The change in eligibility means people from the ages of 50 to 64 are now advised to get a 4th dose. The extra booster will also be made available for people aged 30 to 49, but it won't be specifically recommended. And the interval between a 2nd and 3rd dose has been cut from 4 months to 3.
This decision that I've accepted will reduce severe disease and will relieve pressure from our hospital system.
Hospitals are already facing a COVID crunch. Coronavirus patients now take up 4,000 of the nation's hospital beds, and the number of COVID patients in intensive care is up 40% in the last 10 days. But it's still not clear how much impact the changes will have. ATAGI's own advice says social measures like mask wearing will have more of an effect.
In the US, the 4th dose is recommended for over 50s, and emerging data says there's also benefit in that group.
Australia's vaccine rates are among some of the best in the world, but booster rates are still lagging. The government says 5 million people who are eligible for a 3rd dose are yet to go out and get one. And for people who've been eligible for a 4th jab, the rates aren't much better.
2 doses of vaccine is simply not enough.
They'll double down on the message that hasn't quite got through.
Because more boosters means we're all more protected.
Elias Kluwer, ABC News, Canberra.
And of course, a wonderful report, very good reporting by there, and well done. Good to see that. Well, right now going overseas, and the big news is British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has finally, now hung up his body, finally given up And of course, ever since he got elected, he was on sort of choppy waters and dicey the situation, as one can say. And there had been so many calls about so many incidences that, at many times called for vote of no confidence and other things. But because the Constitution only allows for so many vote of no confidences within the period, so the only option there was for him to resign. People asked him to resign. So many cabinet ministers resigned just in protest. Finally, he's come to the power.
It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. And I've agreed with Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of our backbench MPs, that the process of choosing that new leader should begin now. And the timetable will be announced next week. And I've today appointed a cabinet to serve, as I will, until a new leader is in place. So I want to say to the millions of people who voted for us in 2019, many of them voting Conservative for the first time, thank you for that incredible mandate, the biggest Conservative majority since 1987, the biggest share of the vote since 1979. And the reason I have fought so hard in the last few days to continue to deliver that mandate in person was not just because I wanted to do so, but because I felt it was my job, my duty, my obligation to you to continue to do what we promised in 2019. And of course, I'm immensely proud of the achievements of this government, from getting Brexit done to settling our relations with the continent for over half a century, reclaiming the power for this country to make its own laws in Parliament, getting us all through the pandemic, delivering the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, the fastest exit from lockdown, and in the last few months, leading the West in standing up to Putin's aggression in Ukraine.
So there you are, and the news that he will be stepping down. Well, now the big question is, who are the candidates to take up his role?
Could probably say this was a moment, months in the making. For a long time it felt the question wasn't will Boris go, but when will Boris go? And that was because his leadership was under such intense pressure, particularly in the last 48 hours, as he said, as dozens and dozens of government ministers resigned and called for him to quit. But really over the last few months as well, he only just survived a no confidence vote in June. And that really stemmed from the damaging revelations about the lockdown parties that happened in that building, number 10 Downing Street, his official residence. There was a feeling that Boris Johnson had lost the trust of the public and that he needed to go so that the government could repair his relationship. Through all of this, though, he has remained defiant, saying he's the best person to lead the party. He wanted to stay in the job. And what changed? Well, he lost the support of some very senior cabinet ministers, some of his really loyal supporters. We saw them walking into this building and we understand they said to him, your position is no longer tenable. So then we saw him walk out here, out the front of number 10 Downing Street and make that resignation speech, and it was very clear he was going reluctantly and he was only going because he couldn't convince his party. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
I regret not to have been successful in those arguments, and of course it's painful not to be able to see through so many ideas and projects myself. But as we've seen at Westminster, the herd instinct is powerful. When the herd moves, it moves. And my friends, in politics, no one is remotely indispensable.
Yeah, even calling it an eccentric decision, you certainly got the impression he did not want to go. But where does it leave the country? Who's going to be the new leader?
Well, that's the question, Lisa. Who's stepping up and when? As we've been discussing, Boris Johnson is now a caretaker Prime Minister. There are government members who would really like to push him out to do that as soon as possible, even though he would like to stay for some time. He said he's happy to stay for months in that role. But the reality is it could take some time, and that's because the way they elect leaders to the Conservative Party is quite different to the way we might be used to in Australia. It often happens through several different rounds of ballots, and also party members get a vote. So the last time there was a change of leadership, it took about 6 weeks, and in this case it's complicated by the fact that there's also a parliamentary recess. And who is it going to be? Well, there's no clear front runner. There's certainly a lot of names that are being put forward. One poll suggested the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, was a favourite. Another that the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, was another front runner. But really it could go to anyone at this stage, and people are just really waiting to see what happens. We're expecting a timetable from the Conservative Party about when some of those steps are going to be taken. And we're expecting that really in the next couple of days.
Yeah, it's got to have caused some real damage to the Tories.
Well, Lisa, how can a government really operate like this? The feeling here was that it was absolutely chaotic. When you've got those ministers resigning, it was hard to keep up with just how many were resigning in the last 48 hours. Aides also stepping down. I mean, how can a government focus on its public when that's what's going on, when there's all this speculation about who the party leader should be? So whoever steps into this job certainly will have a big job, really, to mend that relationship with the public, to prove to the public that they're trustworthy, that they put them first. But whoever does stand up and take this job will probably benefit from the fact that they're simply not Boris Johnson.
And benefiting from that simple fact as well. Wow. Well, right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go to our daily India report. After that, we will take a look at some of the functions and events taking place. But don't forget that tomorrow we have a very special interview coming up with the newly awarded OIM, Pinky Singh, and the interview will be conducted by Madhu Khanna. That's coming tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't forget that. Right now, it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and much more on India and the Indian diaspora. Top Indian Army officer has been appointed UN Mission's Force Commander in Sudan. Lieutenant General Mohan Subramaniam of the Indian Army has been appointed by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres as his new Force Commander of the United Nations mission in South Sudan. Lieutenant General Subramaniam succeeds Lieutenant General Shailesh Tinaikar, also from the Indian Army, to whom the Secretary General is grateful for his tireless dedication, invaluable service and effective leadership as United Nations mission in South Sudan Force Commander. Lieutenant General Tinaikar was appointed by Guterres as the Force Commander in May 2019. Lieutenant General Subramaniam has a distinguished military career with the Indian Army spanning over 36 years, and most recently he served as a General Officer commanding Military Region, Operational and Logistic Readiness Zone in Central India, contributing to Army's operational and logistic preparedness. Previously he served as the Additional Director General for Procurement and Equipment Management at the Integrated Headquarters of the Ministry of Defence, Army 2019 to 2021, General Officer commanding a Strike Infantry Division 2018 to 2019, Deputy General Officer commanding of Infantry Division 2015 to 2016, and Commander of a Mountain Brigade 2013 to 2014, among other appointments within the Indian Armed Forces. Bus service has been started between Kathmandu, capital of Nepal, and Siliguri, a city in West Bengal. A bus service between Siliguri in northwest Bengal and Kathmandu in Nepal was flagged off on 6 July. The service will benefit hundreds of Nepalese people who travel to Siliguri, Darjeeling and neighbouring Sikkim for livelihood. It will also boost tourism in the region. The service was inaugurated at the Junction bus terminus by State Transport Minister Firhad Hakim. The bus, owned by North Bengal State Transport Corporation, will be run by a private agency. Tickets have been priced at Rs 1,500 and will be available at the Tenzing Norgay bus terminus in the city. The 40-seater bus will be operated from Siliguri on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. It will leave at 3 p.m. Hakim said the West Bengal government is also planning a bus service from Siliguri to Bangladesh. After 8 incidents in 18 days, Indian Airlines SpiceJet gets government notice on safety. An unusually high number of incidents involving SpiceJet aircraft has prompted the Indian aviation regulator to seek an explanation from the airline. The Directorate General of the Civil Aviation has pointed out big gaps in how the airline is functioning, from operating flights with degraded safety margins, issues that point at poor internal safety oversight, to vendors not being paid on time, leading to a shortage of spare parts for the SpiceJet fleet. The government's notice said SpiceJet is operating its fleet on MEL or minimum equipment list, which means the aircraft are considered safe to fly, but not all systems are necessarily operational. On 5th July, a SpiceJet cargo plane flying to China returned to Kolkata after its weather radar stopped working. It was the 8th incident of the technical malfunction on a SpiceJet aircraft in the last 18 days. The DGCA has said most incidents are routine and addressed in no time. On 5th July, the Delhi-Dubai aircraft was diverted to Karachi after the fuel indicator started malfunctioning, while Kantla-Mumbai flight landed at Mumbai airport after aircraft's windshield cracked. While on 2nd July, Jabalpur-bound aircraft returned to Delhi after smoke was seen in the cabin. Iconic Indian music composer Ilaiyaraaja and athlete PT Usha nominated to the Rajya Sabha, India's upper house. Legendary athlete PT Usha and music maestro Ilaiyaraaja were among prominent personalities nominated to the Rajya Sabha on 6 July. Philanthropist and the administrator of the Dharmasthal temple, Virendra Hegde, and noted screenwriter V. Vijayendra Prasad were also nominated to the upper house of the parliament. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said on Twitter, "The remarkable PT Usha ji is an inspiration for every Indian. Her accomplishments in sports are widely known, but equally commendable is her work to mentor budding athletes over the last several years. Congratulations to her on being nominated to the Rajya Sabha." He also shared his pictures with Usha and Ilaiyaraaja along with his congratulatory messages in separate tweets. India has logged 18,930 new COVID-19 cases in 24 hours. India reported 18,930 new coronavirus cases and 35 more virus-related deaths in the last 24 hours. The death count now stands at 5,24,305 according to the Union Health Ministry. Presently, there are 1,19,457 active cases in the country, comprising 0.27% of the cumulative case count. The recovery rate stands at 98.52%. The daily positivity rate was recorded at 4.32%. Over 198 crore doses of coronavirus vaccines have been administered in the country so far, the COVID dashboard has showed. Meanwhile, the WHO has said that a new sublineage BA.2.75 of the Omicron variant has been detected in India and other countries. Delhi will host perhaps the biggest shopping festival of India in January and February 2023. The national capital of India will host the Delhi Shopping Festival from January 28 to February 26, 2023, and it will be country's biggest such event, Delhi State Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal announced on 6 July. The festival will have guests from the country as well as abroad to experience Delhi, its culture, food and shopping, and the event will generate thousands of employment opportunities, he said. Kejriwal also said the government is in talks with hotels and airlines to provide special packages to those who want to visit Delhi at the time. He said it will be the biggest shopping festival in India and we will make it biggest in the world in the coming years. Delhi will be decked up as a bride and there will be heavy discounts on products. The festival will have exhibitions on spirituality, wellness, health and gaming and several entertainment avenues, he mentioned. There will be a special opening and closing ceremony and 200 concerts will be organized to entertain the visitors. Special food walks will be held that will see participation of international restaurants and national restaurants since Delhi is known for its food. India's central bank eases forex rules to defend the Indian currency. The Reserve Bank of India announced a series of steps to boost foreign exchange inflows to arrest the slide of the Indian rupee against the dollar. The measures include doubling the annual overseas borrowing limits for companies to $1.5 billion and temporarily abolishing interest rate caps for banks to attract deposits from non-resident Indians, RBI said on 6 July. The central bank also eased the rules for foreign investors to invest in government and corporate debt in India. The rupee has come under severe pressure, hitting a series of lows in the past weeks as foreign portfolio investors pulled out their investments from India and the country's trade gap progressively widened to a record in June because of rising import cost of crude, coal and other commodities. Economists have estimated India's current account deficit, a broad measure of the country's trade and financial flows with other nations, to widen to more than 3% of the GDP this fiscal, nearly double that of the previous year. RBI said the latest steps would help diversify and expand the sources of forex funding and reduce current volatility. While the current account deficit remains modest, capital flows, barring portfolio investments, remain stable, and an adequate level of reserves provide a buffer against external shocks. The RBI said rupee has depreciated by 4.1% against the dollar during the current fiscal up to 5th July, which is modest relative to other emerging market economies and even major advanced economies. India's forex reserves stood at $593.3 billion as of 24th of June. A new song called Kangan Ruby from the upcoming film Raksha Bandhan has been released. In the song, Bollywood khiladi Akshay Kumar is seen romancing Bhumi Pednekar. Kangan Ruby, the next song from Akshay Kumar's upcoming movie Raksha Bandhan, is out. The Anand L. Roy directorial is slated to release on August 11. Akshay Kumar shared and pinned the song on his Instagram handle. He captioned the song, Hawa mein ghula hai pyar ka rang, Ruby wale Kangan ke sang. Hashtag Kangan Ruby is out, tune in now. In his post, Kumar tagged the movie crew along with Akshay. The film features Bhumi Pednekar, Sehajmeen Kaur, Deepika Khanna, Sadia Khatib and Smriti Shrikant. Apart from the movie crew, Zee Music Company's YouTube channel also shared the song. In the song, one can see romance brewing between Akshay and Bhumi. In this song, Bhumi is portrayed as a strong and bold character. In the song, Akshay Kumar is urging Bhumi to wear Kangan, that he will give it to her. The setup of the music is placed at a wedding. In fact, in the music, the protagonist's sister urges him to go and spend time with his lady love. That's all in today's bulletin.
Thank you very much for that, Anubhuti, and that's the Daily India Report. And right now, before we finish off for today's segment, don't forget that tomorrow we have this wonderful interview with Madhu Khanna, and while she interviews Pinky Singh OIM on the Australian Indian Radio at 10 a.m. And here's a sneak preview of what it would be like.
मुलाकात हुई, हम दोस्त बन गए, तो उस टाइम पे मैंने एक प्रोग्राम ऑर्गेनाइज किया और हमने काफ़ी फंड रेज किया और किसी एक भले आदमी ने उनको पूरी वैन डोनेट की उस फंक्शन के थ्रू। वो भी अपना नाम नहीं बताना चाहते और उनकी उस वैन को ठीक करने की जिम्मेदारी काफ़ी सालों तक मेरे हस्बैंड जो मैकेनिकल साइड से ताल्लुकात रखते हैं उन्होंने की। तो वो कुछ अनजाने में हो जाता है। तो आप ये कह लीजिए कि तो वहाँ से एक शुरुआत होते होते ऐसे कई काम होते चले गए। तो there's many other things.
इसके अलावा
इसके अलावा जैसे एक दो अपने बड़े अच्छे माइग्रेंट बच्चे जब नहीं आए कोई मिले हैं और जॉब्स की शुरू में काफ़ी दिक्कत होती थी तो मेरी बहुत अच्छी एक दो सहेलियाँ हैं जिनके अच्छे स्मॉल बिजनेस हैं तो उनका नाम रेकमेंड कर दिया उन्हें नौकरी मिल गई किसी भी रहना है कई बार कोविड में खाना पहुंचाना।
लोगों को कैसे पता कि उन्होंने आपको अप्रोच करना है?
कुछ जैसे पंजाबी वेलफेयर एसोसिएशन है तो उसमें मेरा नंबर है अगर कोई गूगल करो मेरा नाम लिंक्डइन पे हर जगह है। कुछ अपने मेरे ख्याल वर्ड ऑफ माउथ कुछ हम लोग अगेन बैक टू द पॉइंट सारी कम्युनिटीज में होगा पर इंडियन में कुछ अपना है कि अगर हम मुझे कोई अच्छे आर्टिस्ट या किसी स्पेशल स्कूल या किसी की जरूरत है हेल्प है तो मुझे पता है कि मैं मधु दीदी के पास जा सकती हूँ। किसी को पता है कि कुछ और रिलेटेड कोई सेवाएं हैं या इंडिया डे फेयर से कुछ है तो उमेश जी के पास जा सकते हैं। ऐसे हमारे वर्ड ऑफ माउथ से आई थिंक एक इंसान से दूसरे इंसान को पता लगता चले जाता है कुछ।
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's a sneak preview of the interview that's coming in tomorrow at 10 a.m. Quite a detailed look into, Pinky Singh on being awarded the OIM, and Madhu Khanna will probe why and how she has been awarded and all the things that she has been doing in the background, which might not be known to many people. But just a small disclaimer that the interview will be in Hindi. So that's at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and 9 a.m. tomorrow we'll have our daily news segment. So ladies and gentlemen, it's been wonderful having your company right now. I'm going to leave you with the functions and events that are taking place. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio. And right now, as I mentioned, that don't forget, tomorrow we have that very special interview coming up with Madhu Khanna, and the guest speaker would be Pinky Singh, the newly appointed OIM, and Madhu Khanna will be looking into how and what has she done to be awarded the OIM, which is one of the highest civilian awards here in Australia. As a disclaimer, that the interview will be in Hindi, and it's at 10 a.m. tomorrow, right after the news, which will be at 9 tomorrow. So with the weekend edition, we'll be coming with that. It's been wonderful having your company, and don't forget that tomorrow we also have the Sai Baba Palki Festival, so make sure that you go and take part in that. If you would like to be informed about all the functions and events taking place here in Brisbane, all you need to do is subscribe to our Brisbane Indian Times the subscription list, and you will get a reminder every Friday of all the functions and events taking place right here in Brisbane. Well, until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us. It's been wonderful having your company.